The Chernobyl disaster was one of the worst nuclear accidents in history. It's hard to say exactly how many people were affected because the Soviet Union wasn't very open about it, but many experts think it caused at least 100,000 deaths. Chernobyl, once a busy town, is now frozen in time, a reminder of humanity's biggest mistakes. People still go there, even though it's dangerously radioactive. They explore abandoned buildings and find eerie things, like streets full of gas masks and even radioactive spiders. After the disaster, something strange happened to the birds in the area, catching the attention of scientists. Let's talk about this, and more only in today's video of the dark things found in Chernobyl. Number 1. The Blackbird of Chernobyl. In the months leading up to the devastating events of April 26, 1986, an eerie and mysterious presence unsettled residents near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. People reported encounters with a deformed creature, a strange figure with enormous wings and deep red eyes. This creature, dubbed the Blackbird of Chernobyl, cast a haunting shadow over the area, manifesting in nightmares and unsettling encounters with locals. Then, in the dead of night, disaster struck with the explosion of Nuclear Reactor 4. The ensuing fire and nuclear meltdown forced the evacuation of over 350,000 people amidst the chaos. Some survivors claim to have witnessed a massive black bird with a wingspan of 20 feet soaring through the sky. This story may ring a bell for some, bearing resemblance to the legendary Mothman sightings in West Virginia, just before the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1968. The physical description of the creature aligns closely in both cases, and they were both said to appear shortly before disasters struck. Intriguingly, after each catastrophe, both the Blackbird of Chernobyl and the Mothman vanished without a trace. These ominous creatures seem to serve as harbingers of impending doom, lurking in the shadows before calamity strikes. Number 2. Radioactive spiders. Imagine getting bitten by a radioactive spider and turning into a mutated human. Yes, you heard that right. But let's get back to the reality at hand. The spiders in the exclusion zone of Chernobyl are radioactive, so getting bit by one is absolutely not on anyone's wish list. And here's the kicker, they spin radioactive webs too. Yeah, you heard that correctly. So not only do you have to worry about the spiders themselves, but you also have to watch out for stumbling into their lethal webs. I mean, seriously? No, thank you. Spiders are already creepy on their own, but imagine them being radioactive. It sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Radioactive, radioactive, indeed. Just imagine if Peter Parker had been bitten by one of these critters. He'd probably turn into some sort of mutated Spider-Man or something along those lines. Number 3. Giant catfish. Near the reactor in Chernobyl lies a toxic river brimming with radioactive water. What's truly unsettling is that despite its toxicity, this river is home to a variety of aquatic life, including giant catfish. Yes, giant catfish. A video from 2016 captured one of these massive creatures swimming in the water, initially sparking speculation about mutated animals. However, it turned out to be a regular, albeit unusually large, catfish. Still, the fact that they've adapted to survive in such highly toxic conditions is mind-boggling. Furthermore, they thrive there because there are no higher predators in the water. While it should be obvious, it's worth mentioning that fishing in this river is strictly prohibited. Despite this, I wouldn't be surprised if some people were tempted to try. So let's make it clear, don't go fishing there. Number 4. Radioactive abandoned hospitals. Hospitals already carry a somber air, even amidst bustling activity. But deserted radioactive hospitals take that ambience to a whole new level. Picture an empty, desolate hospital nestled in the heart of a radioactive wasteland. Its walls are adorned with peeling paint, beds are rusted, and the structure itself seems to decay before your very eyes. It's the kind of place that exudes atmosphere, but not the soothing, comforting kind. This hospital in Chernobyl is highly radioactive, and people are actually not allowed to enter it because of how radioactive it is. Each creak and groan of the building only amplifies the lingering sense of dread in the air. Number 5. Barn swallows. These swallows, typically known for their dark feathers, have shown a surprising change in color. These birds, lacking melanin, the pigment responsible for the color of feathers, skin, and eyes, displayed lighter feathers than usual. This unexpected color change is believed to be linked to the impact of radiation on melanin production. Melanin plays a crucial role in shielding birds from harmful ultraviolet radiation. However, within the Chernobyl exclusion zone, scientists observed a peculiar trend among barn swallows. Their lighter feathers showed that they had less melanin. Through studies on these melanin-deficient barn swallows, researchers aimed to discover the mechanisms behind this adaptation. Radiation exposure is known to inspire heritable change, and the lighter feathers of these birds suggest alterations in their DNA, influencing melanin synthesis. It is speculated that these genetic changes resulted in the expression of lighter-colored pigment. Also, not to mention, these swallows also have severely deformed beaks, which probably is also because of the radioactivity in the area. This phenomenon raises interesting questions about the potential long-term evolutionary effects of radiation on species within the Chernobyl zone. The implications are both fascinating and mysterious, prompting further exploration into the consequences of human-made disasters on the natural world. Number 6. Graffiti. While most people steer clear of nuclear disaster zones, some adventurous souls see it as an opportunity to leave their mark with a can of spray paint. Over the years following Chernobyl's meltdown, graffiti artists have covertly entered the exclusion zone to create stunning artworks on the walls of abandoned buildings. These artworks, though unauthorized, add an eerie yet captivating layer to the desolate area, showcasing human creativity amidst the ruins. Some of the most haunting graffiti can be found in Pripyat, where artists have painted eerie silhouettes depicting the town's missing residents. The effect is chilling, reminiscent of the permanent shadows left on the walls of Hiroshima after the city was devastated by a nuclear bomb during World War II. Number 7. Jar fish. During a trip to explore the ruins of Chernobyl in 2016, photographer and journalist Miriam Weiser stumbled upon something eerie and perplexing: jars filled with fish and other specimens inside an abandoned building. The idea of someone collecting fish in this manner is baffling enough, but what's even stranger is that the jars appeared to be repurposed containers, possibly once holding pickles or other food items. It's best to leave these jars undisturbed. Just imagine the foul odor if they were opened. Old, pungent fish is definitely not something anyone would want to deal with. As for the other specimens alongside the fish, their identities remain a mystery. If you have any insights, feel free to share them in the comments below. Number 8. Red Forest. Scientists were intrigued by how radiation affected the insects, microbes, and fungi responsible for decomposing dead plant matter in the area. They noticed something peculiar. The trees in the Red Forest, which had perished shortly after the Chernobyl incident, weren't decomposing as expected, even after nearly 20 years had passed. Fallen trees remained virtually untouched, a far cry from the typical decomposition process seen in other forests. So, Timothy Musso, a biologist at the University of South Carolina, Columbia, led a team of researchers in an experiment to investigate further. They filled net bags with leaves from various trees in uncontaminated areas and scattered them across different parts of the forest surrounding Chernobyl, some in contaminated areas and some in non-contaminated areas. When they returned a year later to collect the bags, they were stunned by their findings. Leaves left in the most irradiated areas had barely decomposed, while those left in uncontaminated areas had broken down and transformed into soil, thanks to the thriving microbes and fungi present. This revelation shed light on the fact that heavily irradiated areas aren't decomposing and regenerating at a normal pace. Furthermore, the buildup of leaf litter on the forest floor poses a significant risk of forest fires, potentially spreading radiation beyond the exclusion zone. Number 9. Dogs of Chernobyl. A recent scientific investigation led by researchers from the University of South Carolina and the National Human Genome Research Institute delved into the mysteries surrounding these remarkable dogs. Imagine in the middle of an isolated area surrounding the Chernobyl power plant. A population of wild dogs roams freely. But what sets these dogs apart from their counterparts outside the exclusion zone? That's precisely what the scientists aim to uncover in their study. Carefully examining 302 of these wild dogs, they scrutinized their genetic makeup and behavior. While the findings are still in the early stages, they hint at something extraordinary. These dogs may be thriving despite the adversity they face. As humans evacuated the area, leaving behind their homes and pets, these dogs were left to fend for themselves. Now, generations later, they've established themselves in this harsh environment. Unlike some other wildlife in the area, which has struggled to reproduce due to the lingering effects of radiation, these resilient dogs have not just survived, but thrived. It's as if they've developed a resilience to the very radiation that once devastated their surroundings. Could it be that these wild dogs have mechanisms to resist the harmful effects of radiation, perhaps even becoming more resistant to diseases like cancer? The implications are profound, suggesting the remarkable adaptability of life in the face of environmental challenges. The story of the dogs of Chernobyl epitomizes nature's resilience, demonstrating how life finds a way to not only endure but flourish even in the harshest conditions. As research progresses, it promises to discover more about the remarkable journey of these resilient dogs, turning adversity into opportunity. And let's not forget, they're pretty adorable too. Number 10. Deformed animal babies. The emergence of deformed animal babies, like the skull with swollen eyes and a misshapen jaw, has stirred both curiosity and concern among observers. Some speculate that these abnormalities may be linked to the aftermath of the Chernobyl accident, which saw an uptick in unusual traits among animals in the late 1980s and early 1990s. During this period, farmers reported a surge in deformities, potentially associated with radiation leaking from the protective structure surrounding the nuclear core. Approximately 400 animals, including cattle and pigs, were born with severe abnormalities, such as facial irregularities, extra body parts, and unusual birth sizes. Tragically, their lifespan was limited to just a few hours, underscoring the devastating impact of genetic changes induced by radiation exposure. Moreover, cows exposed to fallout and fed radioactive feed produced milk with radioactive properties, heightening concerns about the long-term consequences of the disaster on the environment and livestock. While some attribute the appearance of deformed animals solely to the Chernobyl accident, others argue that such anomalies are not unique to that event. For instance, reports exist of a horse-camel hybrid born in Romania in 2014, bearing a striking resemblance to the deformed skull in question. Number 11. Self-settlers. Following the Chernobyl disaster, the Soviet government evacuated over 100,000 people from the affected area. However, not everyone was willing to leave, particularly residents of smaller villages who remained steadfast despite the radiation risks. Many of these individuals, seasoned by past experiences under Joseph Stalin and the Nazis, refused to flee from a threat they couldn't see. Around 1,200 people, known as self-settlers, returned to the exclusion zone in the months and years following the disaster. Some reclaimed their homes within a few years, while others returned even sooner. Despite objections from the government, their determination outweighed any attempts to stop them. These residents are fully aware of the risks posed by radiation. Yet, they continue to farm the contaminated soil, raising livestock such as chickens and hogs, despite the hazards associated with consuming meat from animals within the exclusion zone. Today, many of these resilient individuals are in their 70s or 80s, and remarkably, they remain mostly healthy, a testament in their eyes to the safety of their chosen lifestyle. In the exclusion zone, perhaps the most peculiar sight is that of the common tourist. Number 12. The elephant's foot. A substantial amount of black corium makes up the elephant's foot. Because of its form, which resembles an elephant's foot, it is known as the elephant's foot. This item is really lethal. It releases a lot of radiation. Radiation poisoning might be fatal for anyone exposed to it for even a short while. And what do you know? It continues to melt into Chernobyl's base and produce heat, even if it isn't as active as it once was. The most terrifying aspect is that it may explode again if it comes into touch with water. The elephant's foot will eventually cool on its own, but until then, it will always be extremely radioactive, so people shouldn't get near it. Number 13. Creepy dolls. Throughout history, one myth proven to be true. Dolls can be incredibly creepy, especially in the context of nuclear ghost towns. It almost feels fitting that Pripyat is littered with old broken dolls, so many that it could easily serve as a setting for a bizarre spin-off of The Conjuring. Wherever you turn in Pripyat, it seems like eerie dolls are there, watching you. They perch on windowsills, lean against skeletal bed frames, and lie scattered amidst piles of debris. Some even adorned with gas masks, adding an extra layer of unsettling horror. While it may be tempting to believe that everything in Pripyat remains exactly as it was left on the day of evacuation, the reality is quite different. Many of the scenes you encounter have been rearranged by tourists seeking to capture the perfect spooky photo. It's suspected that a significant number of the dolls may not even be original to Pripyat. Some appear almost brand new, suggesting that tourists have brought them along for the sake of Instagram-worthy snapshots. Number 14. The nuclear power plant. Undoubtedly, the most terrifying aspect of the Chernobyl area is the nuclear power plant itself. Until recently, the only barrier separating the failed fourth reactor from the rest of the world was the colossal structure known as the sarcophagus. Constructed from 14 million cubic feet of concrete and over 8,000 tons of metal, this monumental shield was assembled by Soviet workers, aptly named liquidators, over the course of 206 days. Their shifts lasted a mere 5 to 7 minutes each, as spending any longer near the reactors could have proven fatal. However, even these brief shifts were perilous. It's estimated that thousands perished during this hazardous work, while many others faced long, agonizing battles with cancer in the years to come. The original sarcophagus, hastily built and structurally unstable, served as the sole barrier preventing catastrophic levels of radiation from being released into the environment. It was a temporary solution in dire need of a more permanent fix. After years of planning, engineers devised a solution, a larger, sturdier sarcophagus to encase the old one, known as the new safe confinement. This mammoth structure, weighing 35,000 tons and requiring the efforts of 10,000 workers, was built to withstand the passage of time for at least a century. Transporting the new sarcophagus and its components from Italy to Chernobyl was a monumental task, requiring 18 ships and 2,500 trucks. Finally, on November 29, 2016, more than 3 decades after the Chernobyl disaster, the new sarcophagus was installed, providing a much-needed upgrade in containment measures. Number 15. The ghostly figure. Chernobyl is haunted by many spirits. Any place that witnesses a major catastrophe must undoubtedly be haunted. This time, the ghost was seen on live television. Thus, Destination Truth on the Sci-Fi Channel visited Chernobyl and carried out several paranormal investigations. They proceeded to Reactor 4. They saw a human form emerge on a thermal imaging camera while they were there. They think that's the spirit of one of the workers who perished in the blast. They also examined other abandoned hospitals, where the thermal imaging camera revealed several persons roaming throughout the facility. That sounds eerie, doesn't it? In another story, a person went with some of his friends to explore the dangerous area, and they decided to make it even scarier by going at night after already checking out Pripyat during the day. As they got close to a big Ferris wheel, they heard kids laughing far away. It made them all quiet and scared. One of their friends thought they should find out where the laughter was coming from. Even though they were scared at first, they all agreed to follow the sound. They ended up at an old school where the laughter seemed to be coming from. But as they got closer, the laughter stopped suddenly, making them really scared. They got so scared that they ran away from the school as fast as they could. Even now, they can't forget the weird laughter they heard in the empty halls of Chernobyl. Number 16. Room full of gas masks. There's this place called Chernobyl Gallery, known for showing off cool ruins, and they say middle school number 3 has the biggest stash of gas masks you'll ever see in Pripyat. Now, if you stand in that room and let your imagination run wild, you might think of some pretty scary stuff, like a bunch of kids panicking and struggling to put on their gas masks as radiation fills the air. But truth be told, it's not that dramatic. Most of those masks were actually just sitting in storage when the disaster happened. Chances are, nobody even touched them during the chaos. They probably got moved out of there months or even years later. Take a closer look at the masks, and you'll see something interesting. The filters are missing. Seems like some sneaky folks came by later, hoping to grab the silver inside to sell. Who knows, maybe someone out there's rocking radioactive silver jewelry or eating with Chernobyl silverware. Pretty wild, huh? Number 17. The mutated wolves. The wolves in Chernobyl are a big focus for scientists. Some of them even wear special collars with GPS to track how much radiation they're exposed to. Now, there used to be this scary story going around that said these wolves were mutated and super aggressive, almost like monsters. People even said they hunted humans and attacked other animals. But it turns out that was just a myth. What's actually happening is pretty interesting. Scientists think the wolves are mating with the dogs in the area, creating these big dogs that look like wolves. It's kind of cool. I mean, who wouldn't want a wolf dog? But here's the really surprising part. Despite all the radiation, it doesn't seem to bother the wolves much. In fact, their population is growing strong in Chernobyl. Scientists have even figured out that humans have a bigger negative impact on animals than radiation does. Isn't that crazy? There are about 300 wolves living in the exclusion zone. But remember, just like all the other animals we've talked about, they're super radioactive and definitely not safe to get close to or try to pet. Number 18. Birds with extra toes. After the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, things changed a lot around the power plant. Many animals had a hard time because of radiation, but some did something really cool. They adapted in ways we didn't expect, like birds growing extra toes. In the Chernobyl area, scientists found sparrows, swallows, and blackbirds with extra toes. Normally, birds have 3 toes in front and 1 in the back, but these birds might have an extra one. This weird thing happened because of radiation, but it doesn't mean all the birds there are messed up genetically. It's more like a rare thing that doesn't happen to all birds or all the time. Even though radiation can be bad for animals, some in Chernobyl seem to be doing okay. Scientists have seen birds and other animals doing things differently and changing their bodies to live better in that tough place. It shows how amazing animals can be at adapting to hard situations. And that's all for today. Do you find any of these things bizarre and creepy? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next one. Goodbye.